Okay, back home, bit late, not as late as last week, so some improvement, but I was in Melbourne from Wednesday, doing workshops Thursday, Friday, doing talk Thursday. I actually went to a user group Thursday night and didn't do anything. I did do some selfies, which was I still find it kind of funny, kind of weird, if I'm completely honest. But I went to a DDD by night event that my mate Lars Clint had organised because I was in Melbourne anyway, and I wanted to kind of catch him and had a beer, so went to the DDD thing, and I didn't have to do anything, which felt really, really weird to go to a community event or a conference or something and not have anything to do. It's kind of nice, actually, no responsibility. So anyway, did that. I saw some Have I Been Pwned stickers in the wild. This was really weird too, like when you go somewhere and you see the sticker and you're like, wow, it's someone else knows about the thing. And I know people know about it, but it's just something different seeing the sticker there. So anyway, I was in Melbourne, did the workshop for a couple of days, got home very late last night, back to the Gold Coast. So now I'm home and I have several days before anything else. So next week I will be at the AusCert conference here on the Gold Coast. So AusCert is probably our premier InfoSec conference, I'd say, for Australia. Certainly been going for a very long time. I've been going for years. It is walking distance from home, which is absolutely sensational. This is a really, really nice change. So Scott Helm has actually just arrived. He's going to be there with me. He's doing a couple of days of workshops. I am doing a keynote on Thursday. I'll be doing a closing keynote on Thursday after my friend Mikko Hyppinen, who does one in the morning. Fantastic talks from Mikko, so looking forward to seeing that. And then social things there, and I'm doing a speed debate and the panel there on Friday. I do need to actually prepare some stuff as well. I've got to work these things out. So I'll do that, and then I'll have a couple of days at home before it's back to Europe Monday after. But I'll do another weekly update from home before that, and I'll do that one with Scott as well, since he'll be around then too. So that's what's coming up in terms of all the shenanigans of conferences and things like that. Incidentally, I was just thinking, because I got a coffee here, one of the great things about Australia, and I do hear this from other people that come to Australia from all around the world as well, is we do have epic coffee in Australia. And I know this surprises some people, but honestly, it is sensational. And Melbourne is kind of like the hub of the epic coffee. You never see a Starbucks, all right? Put it that way. Just all these little sort of mum and pop coffee shops around the place which just serve sensational caffeine. Just like I make at home. So, moving on. A couple of things this week. There was actually a blog post this week, and I'm going to explain why I haven't been doing as many blog posts shortly and over the next few weeks. But there was a blog post, but before that, I'll talk about last week. I did my weekly update last week, and I had a comment pop up here from someone about... I'm going to link to it, and you kind of make up your own mind, but it just seemed a little bit out of context comment. I recently attended an graduation, interesting choice of words there, and graduation event for the latest group of startup companies, blah, 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 blah. One of the companies might be really interesting. It's Next Gen Password Management. It's mindpassco.com. Now, when I first saw this comment, this reads like spam. Right? It reads like, hey, go and check this thing out. Let me use your blog and your audience in order to promote this thing. I'm just actually having a look. I don't think I've checked this. The person who commented, Cynthia Traxler, 4 comments, couple of them on that blog post of mine. The other 2. See, I find this odd. There's only 4 comments. No, actually 9 comments. 9 comments. No. So here's what it is. She has made 4 comments, and every single one has been on my blog post. 2 on this one from Weekly Update last week, and 2 from my vulnerability disclosure flowchart like a year ago. So maybe it is a legit person, because it feels like a bot. Anywho, so they're talking about this MindPassCo thing, and basically the value proposition here of MindPassCo. And I'm going to choose my words here. I'm going to be a bit negative about this, in part because it feels like it was spammed on my blog, and in part because when I see things like Next Gen, it's marketing buzz. Anywho, password management evolves. Simply pick 4 objects and experience secure, seamless access to all your accounts. 1,000 times more secure than a normal password manager. No citation as to why. Way easier to use. Also no citation as to why. And what it seems to boil down to, it's a little video just here. The modern password was invented 58 years ago. What else does they say here? I haven't watched all of this. And then they're like, oh, here's all the different password screens and things that are out there. And mine passcode, end the password, which of course is not actually what they're saying. But anywho, you end up with like this 3D model and there's a room and you got to move over and you got to pick things in the room and you got to click the objects. What it seems to be is effectively a password manager where your master password is pattern recognition of objects, where you choose what the objects are in the order which you click them in, and if you can reproduce that thing that you know in terms of where they are and what order they go in, then that unlocks the keychain, and then that authenticates you to the website, which still has passwords because you're still logging into other passwords or other websites. It's just using this to do it. Now, a few things with this. First of all, I've got no problems whatsoever with seeing alternate approaches to how we do passwords and how we solve this problem, because it's still a big freaking problem, and the adoption rate of password managers, any kind of password managers, is still very, very low. Ergo, password reuse and shitty passwords are very, very high. So I'm fine with this. I do have a bit of a heightened sense when I smell a bit of bullshit though. And here's where I'm going with this. So this person, Cynthia, leaves a comment and she sort of says, where's the bit here? She says, it is both visual and actually fun. Now, I had many different ideas of how I might respond to this, because again, feels like spam. And I end up saying, fun, in quotes, doesn't usually feature in the list of qualities people look for in a tool to secure their digital lives. What's the value proposition of this over, say, biometric authentication to a competing password manager? The fun thing, I don't get why you sell a password manager on fun. I mean, there are lots of things that I would buy because they are fun. I would buy games because they are fun. I have bought jet skis because they are fun. They are things I want to have fun with. With my password manager, what are the attributes I look for in a password manager? Secure, like that's a good start. I want to be secure. I want it to integrate across platforms. I want usability to be heightened. I want to have trust in the organization. I want to have all of these things in a password manager. And somewhere like way down the list of priorities is, oh yeah, I'd also like it to be fun when I authenticate to my digital life. Frankly, anything that takes long enough to be fun is no longer fun as an actual password manager. Now, Cynthia kind of went a bit quiet then, and MindPass has come in and said, they've said a few things here, but here's the thing that sort of I felt was actually worthwhile mentioning here and talking about. They've tackled the biometrics thing because I've said, look, biometric authentication, you know, why is it better than, say, biometric authentication? Let's say to my iPhone XS, which is facial recognition, my Windows PC, which uses a Logitech Brio and Windows Hello to do the combination of the IR and video stuff, or Touch ID on older iPhones, or biometric fingerprint readers on my Lenovo laptops. All right, here's what I've said. This is what MindPass has said, obviously in defense of their own product. Biometrics will have a place in this industry, but it has many problems associated with it. Not the least of these is that biometrics have a single failure mechanism weakness. English is a little bit strange with both these accounts, isn't it? I wonder if it's the same person. When someone wipes your fingerprints from a glass, you can never use those prints safely again without the knowledge that someone has your fingerprint secret key. I don't disagree with this, but it's wrong. I'll explain in a moment. According to this paper from Cambridge, references to things here, the quest to replace passwords, a framework for a comparative evaluation of web authentication schemes, University Cambridge Lab Report, 2012, incidentally. The same goes for most biometrics. There is also a big problem with diversity data sets in biometrics. They don't really qualify what they mean by that. I believe these reasons are why NIST hasn't yet recommended biometrics for primary authentication use without assistance from 2FA. So, where do we begin? This just feels like shooting fish in a barrel, this. Let's begin with the biometrics thing about the lifting prints off a glass or things like this. So they've said when someone wipes your prints from a glass, you can never use those prints safely again. Now, A little bit of this is threat modeling, right? So what is it that you are worried about with your things? Now, we're talking about a consumer-orientated password manager with these guys. Remember, it's fun. Consumer-orientated password manager used on consumer-orientated devices. Now, who are your threat actors for your mobile phone, even your Windows PC or your iPad or whatever else it may be? Who are your threat actors? All right, number one, kids. Kids keep trying to get into your stuff. Trust me, I've seen this. The jealous spouse, the person who swipes your phone off a bar, someone who pickpockets it from you. All of these different threat actors who have absolutely zero sophistication when it comes to lifting prints off a glass. Your threat actor is also someone who has physical proximity. So they have to be near the glass that you have just touched in order to get the fingerprint in the first place. Now, before you start losing your minds about this is not to say that none of this is possible with a sufficiently sophisticated threat actor. It is. We've seen this time and time again, but let's just be a little bit rational about this whole thing. So it's got to be someone who has physical access to the glass in order to lift your prints. Number one. Now, number two, what are you going to do once you got the print? Because let's be fair, it's not just the glass either. Every time I go into China, I have to do the fingerprint thing. I've often had to do it when I go into the US as well. I think I've done it in other countries as well. I'm leaving my fingerprints by design in many different places. So there are lots of areas where my fingerprints are. I do go to bars. I drink beer out of a glass. Like, there are prints all over the place. Prints is one thing. Reproducing a prosthetic which is usable is quite another. And again, we have seen this done over and over again. Go and have a Google for Chaos Computer Club in Germany. They've been very, very effective at doing this against things like Touch ID on iPhones. So it is possible, but with what level of sophistication? And the question you've got to ask yourself is, are you trying to protect yourselves from someone who has both the physical access to the glass where you leave the fingerprint and then the capability to go and create a prosthetic which can actually fool the likes of Touch ID on an iPhone? And then, of course, you need physical access to the iPhone as well. So you're starting to join a lot of dots. And when you get to the point where you're talking about someone who has all of these things, that's where I include the XKCD comic, the classic one about a crypto nerd's imagination. So in case you haven't seen the comic before, I actually embedded it in the comment in the last weekly update. But it says, the caption is a crypto nerd's imagination. And there's someone here saying, his laptop's encrypted, let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. And someone else says, no good, it's 4096-bit RSA. Blast, our evil plan is for. This is the imagination. And the next one is, what would actually happen? His laptop's encrypted. Drug him and hit him with this $5 wrench until he tells us the password. Got it. And it's like, all right, so once you are in a situation where you have physical proximity to someone with this level of capability and this big desire to break into your stuff, why don't they just belt you until they get your things? And here's the other thing, right? So, all right, this is one thing. Because imagine it's like, I've heard things before like corrupt cops. It's like, do you think a corrupt cop is going to ask nicely for you to put your fingerprint on the thing? No, they're just going to grab your hand and do it. But the other thing is that if someone has physical proximity to you and they've got the inclination to really force you to hand over your thing, then why don't they just get you to go the MindPass thing and do the thing with your finger? I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Other thing as well is that the big problem something like MindPass has is that it's observable. And this is what's not recognized when they go, oh, like 1,000 times stronger. Maybe they're just looking at the cryptography or the entropy of the input or something like that. I'll tell you what's stronger. It's you standing on a train while someone looks over your shoulder and you're picking objects in a room. Because then if they get your phone, they can do that. Unless you've locked it biometrically, in which case they probably can't. So, there's that. And that's before we get to things like Face ID. Because we are yet to see, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, we are yet to see a proven, workable attack against Face ID. Remember when it first came out with iPhone 10 in 2017, and there was that Vietnamese security company where they had like a mask and they had the towel over it and the phone mounted there and they whipped the towel off and then suddenly it unlocked. That was shady as. And I remember Dan Gooden from Ars Technica really drilled them on it. Like, what were the conditions in order to create the mask? Like, did you need to hold someone down and 3D scan their face? How did you create it? What was all the sort of environmental variables that you would need to know to figure out how likely this thing is? Couldn't get straight answers. And I followed up with Dan like a year later. And he basically went, no, they wouldn't answer the questions. They just went silent. So if we then get to the point of talking about Face ID, with biometric authentication to whatever password manager it is you choose, I struggle to see any way in hell that using something like MindPass, where you pick things from a room because it's fun, makes any sense whatsoever. I would not have gone out and consciously made a point of this were it not for the fact that I feel my blog's been spammed trying to promote something which, as best I can tell, just seems completely irrational. All right, so I'm glad I got that off my chest a quarter of an hour later. But it is that broader sort of discussion about biometrics as well. In fact, someone asked me a question about this when I did a talk for the company I was doing the training with in Melbourne too, related to biometrics. And the point here is to be a little bit rational about who your threat actor is and what you're worried about. And for everyone else going, oh yeah, but the cops could force you to unlock it because it's, US and whatever amendment of the Constitution it is. You can just like 5-click the button on your iPhone and force it to use PIN as well. Like, if you're worried about going through customs because you think it's going to be snared and you think you're actually going to be able to have the argument about, no, you can't unlock it because it's got a PIN and not my face, and actually still get through. Well, yeah, I don't know. It just, there's such like weird, hypothetical, poorly thought out arguments. All right. Moving on. I'm sure I'm going to get shit for that in the comments now. I'll argue about that in the comments if you like. Have I been pwned? A couple of things with have I been pwned. Number one, I was looking at pwned password stats just yesterday. In fact, I tweeted this out. I tweeted this out whilst I was on the plane home last night because I was looking at pwned passwords. It's done just over 16 million requests in 24 hours. Now, it does seem to be a little bit of a spike here of activity, and normally I was seeing like 9 to 10 million requests a day. But yeah, getting up around 16 million requests a day, which is really, really cool to begin with. The thing that's extra cool is that the cache hit ratio in that time period was 99.4%. So 99.4% of the requests to pwned passwords hit one of Cloudflare's 185 edge nodes. They've probably added more in the last few days since I saw that number. Hit one of those 185 edge nodes, which are usually within about 10 milliseconds of the consumer, and got the response from there. So they got it super, super fast rather than having to go through to the Origin website and the Azure data center in the West US. So that is super cool. And of course, what that also means is that only 0.6% of requests I had to process on my Azure function and pay for and all the rest of it. So I'm really, really happy to see that hit rate. When I share these hit rates, I do sometimes have people say, oh, does this mean like 99.4% of the passwords people are searching for have been seen before? No, because that's not how k-anonymity works. So if you recall, pwned passwords uses a k-anonymity model where when you search for a password, you're not searching for a password. Like on your end, you're SHA-1 hashing it, first 5 characters, off to pwned passwords. There's only like 1.1 million possible combinations. So there's lots and lots and lots of different passwords that lead to the same hash prefix being searched for. So that's part of what makes this so optimal in terms of the cacheability. And I noticed also that Stefan from EVE Online, he actually chimed in after this and says, hey, did you guys tweak the cache recently? Seems to improve since May the 20th. And he's got a graph here. And this is one of the things I really love about EVE Online. They've been super, super transparent about not just how they use pwned passwords, but other things like content security policies and things as well. And he's actually shown us here that the hit rate of when they hit pwned passwords, because they have a lot of subscribers sort of logging in, and when they log in, I'm not sure if they do it just on login or at registration as well. They go and see if the passwords are in pwned passwords. And there's a period there for like 2 days by the look of it where that hit rate is pretty much bang on 100%. Actually, some dips before it. So I did notice my cache hit ratio dipping. I reached out to Janard at Cloudflare. He's the one who designed the k-anonymity model for pwned passwords. He made some tweaks, and it just seems to be super rock solid now. I also suspect that just due to the nature of caching, and particularly cache expiration and the way it gets purged, as traffic ramps up more and more and more and more, the hit rate should increase as well. So it'll be interesting to see, like, assuming this keeps growing, like once it's at a constant 20 million a day, am I at like 99.8% cache hit ratio or something? But pretty freaking amazing stuff, what you can do with the cloud these days. Now, there's a couple of other things in the works for Have I Been Pwned, which have been keeping me exceptionally busy. And these are going to be new blog posts that will come out, I think, over, let me see now, this probably over the next 2.5 weeks. So there'll be a couple of big announcements, a couple of really cool things happening, which I'm going to be really, really happy to share. And I will be pushing those out, assuming I get time to actually sit down and finish coding and finish writing blogs and documents and things like this. So you'll see those coming. They have kept me tied up. So if you've noticed that my blog cadence has been a little bit slower lately, particularly over the last few months, it will make more sense. But just trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. It's cool. I'm very happy about the way that Have I Been Pwned is going. All right, so with that that teaser out there, I'm going to leave that there and move on to the blog post of this week, because I did actually push one out. In fact, I wrote this weeks and weeks ago, and I only just got time to finish it. But the more time that goes by, the more relevant this one actually is. Title of the blog post is PayPal's Beautiful Demonstration of Extended Validation FUD. Now, it must sometimes seem like I'm on a bit of a warpath against extended validation, and it's probably not entirely reflective of my genuine feelings about it, because I don't have a problem with extended validation. For the most part, there are a couple of things which I think are actually risk factors, such as the long expiration and the overhead of actually obtaining it should you need to rapidly get one. Those things aside, I don't have an issue with the principle of it. What I have an issue of is the misrepresentation of the efficacy of it. So for people who say it reduces phishing, no, it doesn't. Like, there's just absolutely no possible way it does. And I've written a gazillion things about it. Now, it's usually commercial certificate authorities that are hammering away at this, trying to sell it and getting things fundamentally wrong. It's usually when there's a financial motivation by people that EV is pushed, and the likes of DV, and particularly Let's Encrypt DV, because you don't pay for Let's Encrypt DV, are berated. So for example, I spoke recently about the PC Mag article, which was actually from late last year. I spoke about it in one of my weekly updates, where the author of it said, if you see DV, you're best off leaving the site altogether. I'm like, hang on. So 90-something% of websites out there that have any HTTPS at all use DV. If you leave all of those, you don't use the web anymore. It's basically going to die. Now, so here's the fun thing here. Now, I wrote this because back in April, this shows how long I'd had this in draft for, I wrote a tweet here and I said, always find comments like this amusing. And I'd sort of linked through to, where was this? This was a blog post here. Now, there's a quote here. The main concern about SSL certificates is that all of them are losing their intrinsic trust. And I sort of said, well, hang on. A specifically excluded purpose for certificates is that it's safe to do business with the subject named in the EV cert. So this is a really, really important thing, because a lot of people think that EV certs mean safe, but yet we have like the baseline requirements literally saying it does not mean that. It does not mean trust. It just means this is the identity of the organization. Anyway, some discussions ensued on that, and lots of people sort of arguing about, well, actually, let's be fair, it wasn't lots of people. There are a few people still arguing about the effectiveness of EV. So I wanted to write this blog post. Now, here's the story, and I actually linked through to the video the moment where this happened. And I'm sure that Scott and I spoke about this at the time on one of these videos as well. I was on the stage at NDC Sydney in September, and I was doing a talk about certificates and EV, and I was doing my usual thing of sort of saying to people, you know, who knows what EV is? And incidentally, every time when I'm there in front of a technical audience, it is a single-digit percentage of them that know what EV is. I just spent 2 days at a financial institution, and that ratio held true. This is a financial institution that has EV as well. People don't know what it is. So anyway, I go through this process of explaining what it is, and then I normally sort of say, look, let me show you what EV looks like. And I'm on the stage here in the video, and I've embedded it and deep linked through to the point where this happens. And I'm like, let me show you what EV looks like. Here's PayPal, and as you can see, it has, oh crap, I'm like, it's gone. I can't see it there anymore. Anyway, later on, we learned that EV was not showing the visual indicator in Chrome, but it was showing the visual indicator in Firefox. And just to be clear, that's PayPal's EV. Other EV, so if you go to sectigo.com, for example, you will see EV in Chrome. This is separate to Chrome's intended deprecation of the EV indicator. Different story. So anyway, Scott and I go and sit down straight after this talk, and we're having a look at it, trying to figure it out. Basically, the certificates are chaining up differently through Chrome than what they are in Firefox. They have different certificate stores. And it looks like the OID on one of these certificates, which Chrome was chaining up through, is not recognized as being EV, and then the indicator was not appearing on the browser. So we saw this and we went, oh, wow, this is amazing, because this will be like a flashpoint where we get to prove how effective EV is or is not. Because obviously PayPal will fix this really quickly, and then if only we could sort of get some stats about how much shopping cart abandonment and potential phishing and all this other stuff that's meant to happen, we'll get some stats about how much that actually happened whilst they weren't showing the indicator. Now, it is actually an EV cert, remember that, but it's just the indicator which is not showing in the browser. But the indicator is all there is in terms of the consumer's perception of EV. That's the only thing that makes it work. Anyway, that was September. 25th of May now, so we're like 8 months, more than 8 months on, still no EV displaying in Chrome. Now, this is actually making for great demos, because when I talk to people now and I say, you know, look, do you think, for example, Facebook has EV? And some people say yes, and then I show Facebook and it doesn't. Now what I do is I say, okay, so who thinks PayPal has EV? And there's more people that normally put their hand up. And I go to Firefox and it's like, yes, you're right. And then I say, okay, so now that you know it has EV, if you were to go to PayPal in the future and it didn't have EV, would you leave? And people sort of think about it and they're like, well, I don't know. And it's like, well, you're aware that's the only way it works, right? That's the only way EV works, if you change your behavior in the absence of it. And then I open up Chrome and they don't see it and they're like, what magic is this? Anyway, so you know what magic it is, you know the reason why. But the interesting thing is that PayPal hasn't bothered to roll that cert. They could roll it over to another provider or another leaf that has the right OID in it and it displays like this is possible. They have the technology, they have the money, but they don't care. They know. In fact, I have tweeted out in the past and I said, look, I would love someone from PayPal just to, like let us know how you feel about this and why it obviously doesn't matter. So that was the blog post, and it was probably a little bit ranty in here. There were some discussions both in the thread here and also later on via Twitter where people are still defending it. You know, one person said, I remember via a Twitter conversation, they're like, well, I find it useful. I was like, okay, well, I'm sure it is possible that there is a person out there or a sub-tiny fraction of 1% of the group who finds it useful. There might be those people, but recognize that you are an absolute exceptional minority. And even if you didn't see EV there, you'd still use it anyway. Don't lie to me, you know you would. So that's kind of a fun demonstration, you know, having that there. And I'm curious to see how long this continues for. You know, how long will this go on for where there's no EV indicator in Chrome? If it keeps going this way, Chrome will drop the EV indicator before PayPal updates the certificate or the leaf or whatever it is, the intermediate, which is not showing the OID properly in the... I don't know, but clearly no one actually cares. All right, I feel better for that. All right. I think that's pretty much it for today. So last thing here is sponsorship-wise, I've got Varonis sponsoring me again this week. They've been a massive sponsor this year, alternating every other week. So big thanks to those guys. Their DFIR team is investigating a cyber attack using their data-centric security stack. So go and check those guys out. They do some good stuff, and a great bunch of people too. I've done a bunch of talks for them in the past, as well as a bunch of free courses, which I've mentioned in previous weekly updates too. So give Varonis some support for supporting me. So thank you very much for that. Next week, I will come back to you again from the Gold Coast. I'll be with Scott as well. If there's anything you want him and I in particular to talk about as well, let me know. Send me a message or leave a comment or something like that, and we'll do our best to cover those things as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed a week where there has actually been a new blog post. See ya.